for the first time ever last month, fueled by a record-breaking surge in semiconductor shipments amid a booming memory chip market. The race to find survivors in Venezuela is becoming increasingly difficult as the death toll from last week's twin earthquake surpasses 1,900, even as rare rescues continue to offer moments of hope. Reports say the U.S. and Iran are set to resume indirect talks in Qatar as both sides seek to build on recent progress toward a permanent end to the conflict. South Korea's June exports topped $100 billion for the first time, reaching a record high and making the country only the fourth in the world to achieve the feat. Our Lee Ju-yeon leads us tonight.
Korea's June export hit a new all-time high, topping $100 billion for the first time. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources said Wednesday that June exports surged roughly 71% from a year earlier to $102.25 billion. That makes Korea only the fourth country to record more than $100 billion in exports in a single month, after Germany, China, and the United States. Exports increased in 18 of the 20 major categories in June, with semiconductor leading the overall growth. Semiconductor exports surged roughly 200% from a year earlier to $44.8 billion. Beating the previous record set in May, monthly chip exports topped $40 billion for the first time. Strong demand for memory chips pushed up contract prices, helping fuel Korea's export surge. Experts say the key question now is whether those high prices can hold.
There's plenty of chance that the memory prices will stay high level until the end of 2026. And in that case, I think export value will stay very high throughout 2026.
The strong momentum has raised hopes that Korea's annual exports could reach $1 trillion this year, with the government expressing optimism about the target.
We see a much stronger chance of reaching the $1 trillion milestone now than we did back in May. Exports tend to gather more momentum in the second half of the year than the first, which underpins our positive outlook.
Meanwhile, imports rose 30% from a year earlier, but Korea still posted a record trade surplus of more than $30 billion in June. Still, the government warned that uncertainties remain, including chip price movements, volatility in global oil markets, and growing protectionist measures. Officials said they will work closely with key trading partners to reduce risk for Korean exporters and help remain a stable export environment. Lee Ju-yeon, Arirang News.
The global AI boom is lifting South Korea's economic outlook, with some forecasts now topping 4% growth this year. And the Bank of Korea is expected to follow with a higher projection next month. Kim Do-yeon reports.
Korea's economy is getting a major boost from the global AI boom, with rising demand for memory chips pushing growth forecasts higher. Some institutions now expect growth to top 4%. The Bank of Korea's current forecast is 2.6%, but that figure could be revised upward in August as exports continue to break records. The upward revisions are coming from a growing number of major financial institutions. According to Yonhap News Agency citing Bloomberg data, 11 domestic and international firms now expect Korea's economy to grow by at least 3% this year. South Korean reinsurer Korean Re issued the highest forecast at 4.1%, followed by UK-based Capital Economics at 4.0%. Global investment banks and research firms, including JP Morgan, IM Securities, and Citi, have also raised their outlooks into the mid to high 3% range. Growth above 4% would put Korea clearly ahead of current global projections. The International Monetary Fund forecasts global growth of 3.1% this year, while the World Bank expects just 2.5%. Experts say that kind of performance would have been difficult to imagine earlier in the year before the AI-led tech boom accelerated at such speed.
Fundamentally, no one predicted that AI data center construction would be this intense, or that semiconductor prices would jump 3 to 4 times compared to 2 years ago. Memory semiconductors became an immediate bottleneck, creating a severe shortage that rarely happens, meaning institutions simply could not forecast this at the start of the year.
Following an upward revision in the first quarter, GDP growth to 1.8%, Bank of Korea Governor Han Seong-sook said last month that the central bank's current 2.6% forecast is likely to be raised. Such a move would bring the BOK more in line with private sector forecasts as exports and AI-driven chip demand continue to support stronger growth. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
U.S. and Iranian officials are expected to hold indirect technical talks in Doha as both sides work through the details of a deal aimed at ending the war. But Tehran insists that direct talks are not on the table for now. Kim So-young has the latest.
U.S. and Iranian officials are set to hold indirect working-level talks with mediators in Doha on Wednesday, aimed at implementing the Memorandum of Understanding. But Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law, and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will not take part in this round. The two met with Qatar's Prime Minister on Tuesday, but will not attend Wednesday's technical talks. Qatar's Foreign Ministry spokesperson said they will instead meet with Qatari mediators while in Doha. The clarification came after Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesperson pushed back on suggestions of a broader meeting.
Although talks in Doha are expected to take place tomorrow, they will focus on implementing the provisions of the Memorandum of Understanding, including the clause concerning the release of Iran's restricted assets. No meeting at any level with the American side has been scheduled.
The comments followed remarks by Iran's chief negotiator and parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who laid down a marker of his own in a state television interview. Ghalibaf reaffirmed that toll-free passage through the Strait of Hormuz is guaranteed only for 60 days under the Memorandum of Understanding, describing it as a temporary window for vessels stranded during the wartime blockade. After that, he warned Tehran would begin charging ships under international law, while insisting that Iran and Oman hold sovereignty over the strait. He said Iran would never give up what it considered its rights over its territorial waters. The UN's International Maritime Organization has rejected the idea. IMO's Secretary General Arsenio Dominguez said mandatory tolls that undermine free navigation through the Strait of Hormuz would violate international law. Instead, he suggested a voluntary funding system to support maritime safety in the waterway. For now, all eyes are on Doha, where Wednesday's technical talks could decide whether this fragile ceasefire holds. Kim So-young, Arirang News.
The desperate search for survivors continues in Venezuela, with the death toll from the devastating earthquakes now nearing 2,000. Our Kim Bo-kyung has more.
The Venezuelan resident has spent days searching the ruins of a collapsed apartment building, hoping to find family members trapped beneath the debris after two powerful earthquakes struck the country.
My faith is still intact that I am going to get my family out and I am going to get the people we need to get out, and we are going to keep at it.
Then early Tuesday came a rare moment of hope. A 3-year-old boy, Kleber Moran, was pulled alive from the rubble in the hard-hit coastal state of La Guaira after spending 6 days trapped beneath the debris. Officials said he was the only reported survivor found that day. He was taken to hospital for treatment. The rescue came against a backdrop of widespread destruction. According to NASA estimates, some 59,000 buildings were damaged or destroyed by the twin earthquakes, which struck just seconds apart with magnitudes of 7.2 and 7.5. In the aftermath of the quakes, Venezuelan National Assembly President Jorge Rodriguez said at least 1,943 people had died.
As of today, 1943 people have been counted among the dead. The number of injured has reached 10,571. So far, we have 15,866 people left homeless.
With search and rescue efforts now shifting toward a wider humanitarian response, the World Food Program is appealing for $50 million to help feed up to 500,000 people in Venezuela over the next 3 months.
I think the budget we have now will definitely not cover the whole of the disaster. That is why WFP issued an initial appeal of $50 million to begin to cover and assess for the first 3 months all the needs of the populations that will require food assistance in different modalities.
The head of the UN agency in Venezuela said the earthquakes have further weakened an already vulnerable population. That, he said, is why the World Food Program is calling for sustained support from the start to help prevent families from falling into a prolonged cycle of food insecurity. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Korea has been broadening its diplomatic outreach while placing renewed emphasis on multilateral cooperation. And at this year's Jeju Forum, Arirang News spoke exclusively with candidates seeking to lead the UN, as well as senior European diplomats, to hear what they see how they see the international order evolving and where Korea fits into it. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young, who led our coverage, joins us in the studio today. Welcome, Soo-young.
Hi, Tami.
So, Soo-young, you interviewed several candidates looking to become the next UN Secretary General. What stood out?
Well, what struck me most about this entire coverage was how the candidates really, each and every one of them, really cut to the central theme of this year's Jeju Forum, which was all about reinventing cooperation. And they're very much candid in acknowledging that today's multilateral system is under strain.
The first is for the UN to be back at the table, because when you go around, and I have been traveling a lot and talking to a lot of people, what you find is that people ask you, where is the UN?
As Secretary General, one of the first missions will be to implement this reform on 2 levels. First, at the level of the Secretariat and of the United Nations itself. How can we optimize its functioning? How can we also rationalize its resources and its missions? The second level is with the member states.
Taken together, the debate is no longer just whether the UN should change, but how it can remain effective.
Then, Soo-young, how does that tie into Korea's own diplomacy?
Well, I would say that it really ties in through Korea's own trajectory demonstrated over the years. According to the former Senegalese president that we just heard from, he pointed to Korea's development experience, industrial capacity and ability to work with both advanced economies and the global south as well.
Korea showed that underdevelopment is not inevitable. It went from receiving aid to becoming a donor country, a member of the OECD and the G20. The Korean example can inspire the world, particularly African countries. As president of Senegal, I worked extensively with Korea on economic cooperation, in the maritime sector, in the military and security fields, in agriculture, rice production, and in healthcare.
And at this point in time, the Lee Jae-myung administration has been broadening its scope of partners beyond traditional relationships focused on the Korean Peninsula and tackling the North Korean nuclear issue. It has also been keen to act as a G7+ country in promoting multilateral cooperation as a responsible stakeholder in global governance. Now, that, I think, was pretty much reflected in my interview with the Czech ambassador to Korea.
What is important, is having, a cooperation of the countries, which are aiming at preserving peace and stability, international order, and, following the international law. And I think, in those areas, Korean Republic, the Czechia, and, the European Union are great examples of those values, which we are sharing.
Now, Soo-young, before I let you go, any noteworthy ideas from your interviewees in Jeju?
Well, I'd say that there are plenty to draw from. I mean, many of my interviews highlighted opportunities to move from verbal diplomatic alignment to real, actual practical cooperation. France's Indo-Pacific ambassador, for instance, pointed to defense, interoperability, intelligence sharing and industrial technology.
You will see again in September when the Korean president is coming to a state visit to Paris, that we work on very concrete things like interoperability, intelligence sharing. We talk about also, we are two countries that are very much involved into industrial and technological base, so we also share that ambition to be very, very good partners and more integrated partners.
The Czech ambassador also pointed to important areas where Korea and Europe can do more together.
So we are not having only the bilateral track, cooperation between ourselves, but we as well having here multilateral track within the European Union, and that means, that if the relations goes well between Korea and the European Union, they go as well very good, for Czechia. But we can do some added value, to that, and it means, you can have some niches on the market, which actually we can have a more cooperation, which will be interesting for both sides, mentioning nuclear energy, automotive industry, I would say science and research development, this is, the areas, where we can cooperate,
All of this is, of course, just a small snapshot of the ideas shared at this year's edition of Jeju Forum, which brought together over 6,000 participants in just 3 days.
Indeed. Seong, thank you for your coverage and for your wrap-up tonight.
Great to be here, Tammy.
President Lee Jae-myung has vowed to shift away from the current state of armistice towards a peace regime for the future of Korea. Speaking at a meeting with the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council on Wednesday in Incheon, the president said he will continue to knock on the door that's been firmly closed by North Korea. He added that he will resume action for his peace drive, reiterating that he does not seek reunification by absorption and will not engage in any hostile acts. About 1,400 council members from Eurasia joined the Presidential Advisory Panel meeting, either in person or virtually. And Prime Minister Han Seong-sook began her term on Wednesday after receiving her certificate of appointment from President Lee Jae-myung at the Blue House earlier in the morning. Speaking to reporters on her way to work, she pledged to streamline the administration's policy-making progress and take bolder steps in AI investment. She also vowed to improve the lives of young people and small business owners. And in the afternoon, Han paid her respects at the Seoul National Cemetery before chairing a meeting on AI innovation with relevant ministries. Defense Minister Ang Kyu-baek emphasized the need to consolidate South Korea's military academies into a single educational institution, while stressing that the unique expertise of each service branch, the Army, the Navy, and Air Force, must be preserved. But he added that those differences should not become barriers between them. An made the remarks during the top commanders meeting for the first half of this year on Wednesday. Now, the comments come as the Defense Ministry faces a pushback from the service branches over a reform plan to establish a tentatively named National Military Academy. Now, the new institution would integrate cadet selection for the Army, Navy, and Air Force. And also reiterated the importance of transferring wartime operational control, saying a military that cannot make its own decisions cannot become a strong military. Summer, the season of festivals, is here in Korea. And just as Germany has the Oktoberfest, Korea has the Chimac festival, which kicked off in Daegu City today. Our Hong Sajong is there live. Sajong, what's it like there now? Yes, Dami, I'm here at Duty Park in Daegu, where the 2026 Chimac Festival got underway today. Although it's a Wednesday evening, the venue is already packed with visitors. The upbeat music, Chimac, or fried chicken and beer, and spectacular water shows are helping add to the festival atmosphere. Chimac, the beloved pairing of fried chicken and 맥주 or beer, is a go-to comfort food for many in Korea and an especially popular choice during the summer. The city of Daegu is located in the southern part of Korea and is hotter than Seoul. So local residents and visitors from all over are here to beat the summer heat with fried chicken and cold beer.
Just being outside, enjoying cold beer and fried chicken, watching performances, dancing, getting splashed with water, it's just so much fun.
I came here to make memories with my family. Since we don't get to spend much time together, it was nice to enjoy some food and have fun as a family.
It's great. I like the chicken and the beer. The sound is good and I like the slightly old songs.
Well, it certainly looks like there is plenty of excitement. Sajang, what are some of the festival's biggest attractions or even activities? Well, EDM parties and beer pong are definitely my favorites, but of course, countless beer and chicken stalls offered something for every single taste. And at least 1 million people came all the way here, similar to last year's attendance. More events, including water concerts and chicken eating competitions, are scheduled throughout the festival, which runs through this Sunday. That's all I have for now. Back to you in the studio. Alrighty, Sajong, thank you for the coverage. Now, in other news, young farmers are embracing smart technology to transform agriculture in South Korea, using data and digital tools to boost efficiency while reducing cost and labor. Our Baek Joo-hee tells us more.
In a rural town in Gimhae, a young man monitors his cow's health with a new data app, breaking away from traditional hands-on livestock observation.
The device analyzes individual data and sends it straight to my smartphone. It essentially allows us to monitor and manage the health and condition of each individual cow.
This farm has adopted other technology such as microbial feed incubator and a mass feed production machine. These tools automatically brew nutritional bulk manufactured feed, significantly cutting costs and labor.
As soon as I started working in the farm, I started digitizing our operations. I chose this approach to minimize losses for each individual cow.
With a foundation scholarship, this young farmer has successfully settled into the industry over 3 years. In fact, government agencies, experts, and local farmers alike are increasingly recognizing the vital importance of nurturing the next generation of farmers.
The way young people work is completely different. Our generation only knew how to feed the cattle. We didn't know anything about fermenting or cultivating microbes.
But despite efforts to encourage young farmers, recent statistics reveal a contrasting reality. While the total number of farm households marked a 20% rebound last year, a closer look reveals a critical demographic gap. The share of farm owners aged 49 and under has plummeted from 17.9% to 5.5% over the last 2 decades. With a decreasing number of young farmers, there is a growing demand for more practical solutions.
Our policies must focus on local needs, letting communities request the workforce they require, training customized talents for that demand, and ultimately helping them settle down in the region permanently.
Experts suggest providing hands-on experience and local connections to help new farmers launch their business. Beyond opening doors for more young people to enter farming, Korean agriculture needs a long-term infrastructure and practical support for it to thrive in the future. Baek Joo-hee, Arirang News, Gimhae.
This year's monsoon season got off to a late start. After reaching Jeju Island and the southern regions yesterday, the rain spread into the central regions today. In fact, the monsoon season arrived 6 days later than average in the central regions. The seasonal rain front will briefly shift south tomorrow before moving north again on Friday, bringing rain back to Jeju Island and the southern regions. Tomorrow, temperatures will climb back to around 30 degrees Celsius across most of the country, and afternoon showers are expected to pop up in many areas. Rainfall amounts will range from 5 to 60 millimeters, so you want to leave home with an umbrella. As for temperatures, Seoul will start the day at 22 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon 19, Busan 20 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 31 degrees, Daegu 30, Jeju 26 degrees. Looking ahead, the rain front is expected to spread across the country on Monday, bringing another round of monsoon rain nationwide. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
That's all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
Across borders, surging forward without limits, Korea. Korean culture has moved beyond a passing trend, becoming a force that colors the world. And perhaps its origins trace much further back into our own history. The true roots where this vast chronicle began, where the essence of K-power and the spirit of our people are recorded. In the 17 seconds you casually pass by, thousands of years are breathing within. The moment your gaze lingers, and your curiosity is stirred, the radiant faces of our history begin to awaken. The real stories of these artifacts, stories we never knew. It begins here, now.
When did it all begin? The beginning of joy embedded in daily life, where steps of learning meet a bigger world. And history coexists. The legend continues. Innovative technologies come together to unfold a new future. Building a better tomorrow. A joy accessible to all. Always present in your daily life. JDC.
Knock knock. The magical door to the world of K-animation is swinging wide open. Meet your instant new BFF, the adorable Catch. Tina Ping will have you hooked from the very first glance. Need a hand? Our Robocar Poli Rescue team is always zooming in to save the day. How about tagging along on Pinkfong and Pal's super exciting quest to reclaim their lost magic? With the mysterious life forms Kebion by your side, you can become a Kebion master and save humanity like the total hero. Protecting children's innocence while igniting their boundless imaginations. That's the magic of Korean animation. K-animation, the ultimate bestie for kids worldwide.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyun. North Korea is becoming an increasingly important factor in both regional security and global diplomacy. From its growing military partnership with Russia to the future of North Korean soldiers captured in Ukraine, developments surrounding Pyongyang are raising new legal, diplomatic, and security questions. Now, at the same time, tensions on the Korean Peninsula continue to evolve, making it even more important to understand where North Korea may be headed next. So what should we make of the latest developments, and what could they mean for South Korea? To help us break it all down, we're joined in the studio by Ko Myung-hyun, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy. Very big welcome, Dr. Go.
Good to see you again.
And also joining us is Matthew David Jenkins, Associate Professor of Political Science at Gyeongsang National University. Good to see you.
Good evening. Good to be here.
So, Professor Jenkins, to begin with, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha met with South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Hyun Monday to discuss the future of the captured North Korean soldiers. And the two sides agreed that the soldiers' individual wishes should be respected, along with local international law and humanitarian principles. How would you assess the outcome of those talks?
Yeah, so I think this is a good development in the sense that it moves this from a sort of a political question to a humanitarian question, right? Because the bigger context was prior to this, Russia had proposed exchanging Ukrainian soldiers for North Korean soldiers, who would then, of course, be repatriated back to North Korea. And so it is sort of a deal, right? A prisoner swap, right? So now this is a different tone, right? So it seems clear that both the Ukraine and the Ukraine and South Korea have agreed on a common mutual framework that respects international law, humanitarian principles, the broader humanitarian principles, right, and the individual wills, the desires of the soldiers themselves, right. And so that's a pretty significant change, and that's a good development going forward. Specifically, what that means is that they have to adhere to the Third Geneva Convention, which has a principle of non-refoulement, which means that you cannot send prisoners back to a country where they're going to be subject to torture or some kind of repression or some kind of punishment, right, for betraying their country or something. Which in this case seems to be the truth, because both of the soldiers have admitted that they want to go back to South Korea. So that is a sign of betrayal, right, from the North Korean perspective. So in any case, the bigger thing is that they agreed to this broad framework, and that's the important takeaway there.
Right. Would there be any legal processes that would follow?
Sorry, legal processes that follow.
Mm-hmm. So, they chose to come to South Korea. So would there be any legal processes that needs to follow? following
Sure,
their
I think
decision?
there'll be some processes in order to repatriate them, to make them. South Korea does not recognize, does not recognize North Korean citizenship, so they would automatically become, they would automatically recognize as South Korean citizens by South Korean law.
So Professor Jenkins just touched upon punishment. Speaking of which, so these captured soldiers themselves, they hoped to come to Korea, but what would be the risks if they had been returned back to North Korea, Dr.
I think Professor Jenkins put it really succinctly already that North Korean regime considers essentially surrendering or being captured as a prisoner as a form of defection, and the punishment for defection is capital punishment, is death. And what makes this worse in the case of North Korea is that North Korea, in fact, the punishment it's not limited to the individual who committed quote-unquote crime in the eyes of the regime. The North Korean regime uses the concept of a guilt by association. So at the very least, the family members of the captured soldiers, the prisoners of war currently held in Ukraine, would at very least would be expelled from where they live, and at worst, they could be sent to political prison camps from which they are unlikely to emerge alive. So this is in fact the biggest holdback that was holding the prisoners, the North Korean soldiers from considering even entertaining the idea of surrendering, because they know that the punishment is not limited to themselves. In fact, it's applied to the family members themselves. So I think this is the biggest deterrence against surrendering for North Korean soldiers. And this is the reason why there are so few cases of captured prisoners from North Korea. And this is interesting because I think, and the fact of the matter is, I think there's some gray area right now regarding the soldiers because, prisoners of war held in Ukraine, because by Korean constitution, I think Professor Jenkins already alluded to it. The moment they express their essentially the wish to come to South Korea, and that's actually been conveyed to an official channel, or if they in fact encounter themselves in the South Korean territory. But in this case, they're clearly in Ukraine, so just conveying the message of defection or coming to South Korea to an official channel, in fact, entitles them to South Korean citizenship. So in a way, the two prisoners of war held in Ukraine, in a way, they could be considered to be South Korean nationals already. So which, in fact, creates a lot of dilemma for the South Korean government, because that would automatically oblige the South Korean government to go to Kiev and then demand the Ukrainian government to repatriate these prisoners of war to South Korea. So I think this is the reason why there is so much I would say, gray area, ambiguity about the status of the North Korean prisoners. And I say this is also the reason why I think there's been so much delay in resolving their situation.
Right. So South Korea, we can't ignore the human rights of these captured North Korean soldiers. But at the same time, expanding support for Ukraine could further strain ties with Russia and affect security on the peninsula itself. Professor Jenkins, what principles should guide Seoul's approach here?
Yeah, so I think we want to keep those as two separate issues, right? The humanitarian issue and the strategic issue. As we said earlier, for the POWs, I mean, that's going to be a humanitarian issue. So the principles are, as I said earlier, humanitarian principles, international law, and the individual will of the POWs themselves. So for the strategic part, so South Korea currently is not providing lethal weapons to the Ukraine. It's providing other kinds of assistance like military gear, mine detectors, helmets, and things of this nature. And indirectly, it's providing ammunition to its allies, who are then giving that ammunition to Ukraine. So it's moving indirectly. But so I think that the key thing for South Korea is to continue to maintain that principle and don't provide weapons, lethal weapons to Ukraine, because if they do, then that's going to further, bring to surface the appearance that they are like kind of a belligerent in this conflict, right? And that's not good, because then that's going to give Russia an incentive to further cooperation with North Korea, right? Which is not going to be good for Korea. And so you could have Korea needs to avoid this boomerang effect and avoid escalating tensions over here by maintaining its current course, right, and not providing lethal weapons.
So for Seoul, it's really a balancing act on different fronts. So from Ukraine's perspective, Dr. Go, the issue could also help strengthen cooperation with South Korea. What is Kyiv trying to achieve here?
Well, clearly there's, I wouldn't really call it a propaganda value, but it in fact has a very important diplomatic significance, not just in terms of Ukraine-Korean relations, but also to the as a message to the international community. The capture of these North Korean soldiers as prisoners of war proved Ukrainian, everybody knew that North Korea has sent up to 15,000 soldiers to help Russia to fight Ukraine. But nonetheless, capturing these soldiers proves the point. In fact, these are physical evidence of North Korean participation on the side of Russia fighting against Ukraine. So and in that sense, it's a huge boon to the Ukrainians' diplomatic message. And I think this is the reason why these soldiers were captured not by ordinary Ukrainian soldiers after a battle. In fact, there's a consolidated operation by Ukrainian special forces to capture the soldiers. So in that sense, the Ukrainian government knew beforehand how important it was to capture North Korean soldiers as live prisoners. And so in that sense, I think Ukraine has achieved a major diplomatic victory, because this, in addition to sending the message to the international community that the Russians and North Koreans are essentially cooperating together, and that increases the threat against not just to Ukraine but to Europe. So, and the second, this creates a bridge between the South Korean government and Ukraine. We have to take into consideration the fact that there's been a change of government in Seoul during the duration of the Ukraine war. And we know for a fact that the previous conservative administration was much more proactive assisting Ukraine, which in fact came at the cost of deteriorating our relationship between Seoul and Moscow. And the President Lee Jae-myung wants to, in a way, not to restore the relationship, but in a way maintain a good chance of communication with Moscow. So Ukraine, by highlighting the issue of North Korean participation in the war, as well as the existence of prisoners of war, in fact sends a message to not just the South Korean government, to the South Korean society that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is not that far from the Korean Peninsula, and also it increases the trust building between the government in Seoul and in Ukraine. So this is a perfect trifecta for the Ukrainian government.
Right, so it kind of served as an opportunity to strengthen Ukraine's diplomatic position. Now, if we look ahead, then, Professor Jenkins, how could the handling of these prisoners of war affect Pyongyang's future overseas troop deployments and a broader military strategy moving forward?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, North Korea doesn't have many allies. And its relationship with China is sort of is not always smooth, a little bit rocky recently, especially. And so Russia has become a critical ally for North Korea. And through its participation in the Russia-Ukraine war, it's gained invaluable experience in modern combat, right? So, for example, in dealing with drones, right? Which is going to shape the future. That's going to be very important in the wars of the future. And so it's just, I would see it as an invaluable ally, right? And so supporting Russia is going to be part of that, right? And I don't think they're going to be able to move away from that. On the other hand, right, if North Korean soldiers get captured and they get repatriated back to South Korea, well, then you have a problem of an intelligence leak, right? These North Korean soldiers have fought on the front lines. They have gained a lot of knowledge about North Korean and Russian military operations. That information is, is very, very valuable to South Korea and its allies, and therefore very makes North Korea very, very vulnerable, right? Or at least increases its vulnerability. And so that's not a trivial concern, right, for North Korea. And so I think that said, because of the importance of Russia, I don't think they're going to stop like deploying troops, at least in this particular conflict. I think that what's going to happen probably is that they're just going to tighten up, put tighter controls on personnel, right? Tougher screening, right? Psychological screening to assess their loyalty to the regime and so forth. I think that's going to be the main result, not necessarily a change in the deployment of North Korean troops.
All right, thank you for that. Now, Dr. Go, let's go deeper into North Korean domestic situation. So there's speculation that Pyongyang will hold this military parade in the coming months. If one would be held, when would it likely happen?
Well, so the earliest date will be I think July 21st, which is the Armistice Day. That's the day when the not two Koreas, but the United Nations forces and China and North Korea signed the armistice to end the Korean War. North Korea considers to be the day of victory, so that gives them a good excuse to have a parade. But I don't think that will be the case. I mean, I think traditionally North Korea held the major parades on September 9th, which happens to be the day of foundation of the North Korean state, DPRK, or a month later in the October 10th, which marks the anniversary of foundation of North Korea's Workers' Party. So, so there are different logistics issues as well as the significance of the dates, besides the year, in fact, and because North Koreans consider years of multiple of 5 to be very important. So essentially, years that end in either 5, 10, 15, 20, and in fact, this year doesn't correspond to the criteria. But nonetheless, I think it's all about the timing. So North Koreans use the parades to send a strategic message especially to the United States. So when North Korea and the United States were engaged in a very, I would say, serious conversation regarding the denuclearization during the first Trump presidency in 2019 and 20, North Korea used the occasion of these anniversaries to demonstrate their newly acquired ballistic missile technologies, for instance, by revealing new ICBMs, as well as testing them before the parades and so forth. So, and then because we are again back with President Trump in office in the White House, the North Koreans could be tempted to mount another parade to send a message. And I think this is the reason why there are speculations that North Korea could be preparing for another parade. And they, in fact, held a parade earlier this year, but then it was mostly composed of live humans and soldiers, so it didn't really have an impact that revealing of showcasing a brand new intercontinental ballistic missile would have. So all eyes are on these dates, September 9th, as well as October 10th, for the possibility that North Koreans could reveal their latest intercontinental ballistic missiles, which is actually made of composite materials, which shows that North Koreans have attained a very high level of the ICBM development. Or maybe, in fact, they can declare that they have completely completed their missile development. So we have to wait and see. But then, despite the fact that this year is not a remarkable year by any means for North Koreans, nonetheless, the timing and the fact that President Trump is back in the White House could motivate North Koreans to have another major parade.
Oh, so we'll be looking forward to their latest messages coming from there. But within North Korea, we hear that it's continuing to build fences and laying landmines and constructing tactical roads near the military demarcation line, which is very concerning, of course. What is the significance of these kinds of actions coming from the North?
So in order to understand the significance of this military buildup near the demarcation line, we have to look into the structure of the demilitarized zone that separates the two Koreas. So the demilitarized zone, or DMZ, in fact, it consists of a buffer zone about 4 kilometers in length. So it's divided exactly 2 kilometers each by the center line, which is actually the military demarcation line. But then these 2 kilometers buffer from the military demarcation line to each the demilitarized zone lines on each Korea in fact, has to remain completely devoid of military presence. So the significance of North Koreans building structures near the MDL or military demarcation line means that North Koreans are first violating the terms of the armistice because they are militarizing the demilitarized zone. And North Koreans are doing this because, I think, not because they are preparing to, say, initiate conflict or skirmishes with South Korea along the MDL. I think North Koreans are doing this for the optics of it, meaning I think North Koreans want to send a message not just to South Korea, but to the United Nations Command that actually controls access to the DMZ, that they are essentially translating the newly promulgated the two hostile states doctrine to the military reality, meaning that North Koreans are on the defensive and they are on a hair trigger alert in case the conflict arises with South Korea. So it's a form of raising tension, but I think given the fact that the North Korean presence is just merely presence, not an actual, say, fortification, or like an offensive posture, I think it's more about sending a message, political message to Seoul that South Korea shouldn't even dream about re-engaging North because their actual military posture is one of confrontation.
Then, Dr. Go, I must ask, then why do you think they're trying to, show this strong stance right now?
Because they want to essentially dispel any hope on the South Korean side that North Korea is getting soft, meaning that North Koreans could be entertaining maybe options to engage South Korea diplomatically. And the reason why South Korean hopes everlasting, hope springs eternal in a way. The reason is because North Koreans have a completely different attitude when it comes to engaging Washington. So North Korea was very antagonistic towards President Biden, but with President Trump, clearly North Korea is sending a very different message. The tone has changed, and North Korea is leaving the door to dialogue open. But that's not so. That in fact creates space or hope on the part of South Korea that there could be room for inter-Korean dialogue for South Korea as well. So, and then North Koreans want to send a message that that's not the case, that their attitude or their posture essentially their willingness to engage in diplomatically only happens it's only reserved for the Americans, not for South Koreans.
Thank you for that explanation. Now, finally, to our last question, Professor Jenkins, North Korea, China, and Russia are discussing the development of the Tuman River area. Some believe the project could eventually involve South Korea, U.S., and Japan. How would you assess this initiative?
Yeah, so they've been talking about this initiative for a while. It involves extensive cooperation, especially between Russia and North Korea at the expense of China, right? So I think, unfortunately, it would give Korea greater access. It potentially could give South Korea, greater access to the Eurasian market. But I think realistically, it's not going to happen right now because South Korea is an ally of the United States, right? Who is the enemy of North Korea and Russia, basically, and they're sort of fighting a proxy war right now. So I don't see that at all very likely. And same thing for Japan. So I think the importance of this project, right, is not necessarily, I would say it's less about the potential involvement of Japan or South Korea, but more about its implications for North Korea and Russia's relationship with China, right? As North Korea and Russia get closer and closer, this could create the possibility for strategic leverage against Beijing, right? So I think that would be its main importance at this point. At least until the war in Ukraine is over, I think it's very unlikely for them to get involved, for Japan and South Korea to get involved.
So we'll have to see how this level of cooperation would unfold in the coming months and years. Thank you so much for your insights tonight, Professor Jenkins.
Thank you so much.
And of course, Dr. Go, we really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.